at the Singapore Maritime Week here in Marina Bay Centre. And with me, today I'm very pleased and very privileged to have Michael Vrettos, who is the cybersecurity expert for the marine sector with RINA, who is going to be sharing with us his insights on cybersecurity, cyber threat landscape, and cyber defenses, all things cyber in the maritime sector. So thank you so much, Michael, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us, Jane. It's a pleasure to be here at the Singapore Maritime Exhibition and talking to you.
Yes, it looks really, really busy. So I'm very glad that we get a moment of quietness to record this interview. Really.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so Michael, I thought that before we go into the cyber, all things cyber, right? So maybe give a brief introduction about your role and also what RINA does.
Okay, so as said, I'm responsible for marine cybersecurity in RINA Classification Society. RINA is one of the oldest classification societies in the maritime world. It goes back to 1861, so more than a century and a half,
right, yeah.
150
wow, okay.
years, a bit more than that. So classification societies in the maritime world are like the, let's say, you could say like the auditors in the IT world. So every vessel, in order to be able to sail, needs to have a number of certificates, and those certificates making sure that all shipping companies and the stakeholders involved, they follow the international regulation.
So all these regulations are like health and safety, fire hazards, including cyber.
Yes, exactly. So there is regulations being developed on several different levels. So you have IMO, the International Maritime Organization, which is the highest authority, and they have issued legislation about cyber risk management. So all shipping companies are, let's say, obliged to involve cyber risk management into their SMS manuals. And then we have the...
Sorry, SMS manual, what is that?
Safety management
All right,
systems
okay,
manual.
right. Sorry to interrupt you, go on, Michael.
No, good that you did. And then we have the next level, the organization, the association that all classification societies
right. Okay.
are being cooperating closely. At the moment in the world exist 11 classification
right.
societies from all parts of the world, so like Asia, China, Europe, America, so 11 in total. Obviously, RINA is one of the older ones, one of the founding members of the IACS, and this is where the more, let's say, technical regulations are really being issued. So at the moment, on the IACS level exists 7 panels, and one of them is being the cyber panel. So this is where work is being done about the requirements that shipping companies should comply with on the cyber domain. And of course, we have the national authorities like the flag states.
Right.
Like the port authorities, that they issue also individual regulations or standards, so on the national level, and sometimes you also have regional cooperations.
Right. And of course you have industry standards as well that you use as guidance, like the ISO 2000.
Yes, of course,
right.
the ISO 27 series. Of course, we follow the industry best practices like the NIST framework or like CIS controls from the Center of Internet Security. So many standards exist.
Right, and you talk about some of the partners that or stakeholders that are involved in setting some of these standards, and you talk about the flag states as well as, I believe, international IACS.
IACS, yeah,
yes,
exactly.
That's right. So for our audience who's not too familiar with the maritime sector, right? When you talk about stakeholders, are we talking about also custom agents, shipping agents, ship owners, right? And
it's a vast ecosystem.
Right.
So it's obviously the ship owners, the operators, and you also have the charterers, and we have the oil majors,
port operators.
the
port
port operators, and several different stakeholders involved. It depends on the phase of the ship that you're going to look at it. So we have from the design to conception to the construction of the ship up to the
Deployment.
operational life cycle of the ship. So depending on the phase, you have different stakeholders involved. You also have original equipment manufacturers, the suppliers, the yards where the shipbuilding is happening, and of course the owners. So.
So talking about the stakeholders, right? Digitalization. So you pointed out some onshore and some offshore sort of stakeholders.
Yes.
So how has digitalization affected all these stakeholders? And because I think that also shows the audience what it means from a cyber threat landscape perspective.
Well, there is, we could say, an evolution happening in the last couple of years on the maritime sector because of the widespread application, the widespread use of digital applications. So the digitalization that is happening on the maritime world at the moment, I believe it's unprecedented. And this is driven by many different, let's say, factors, like the need for efficiency. So you need to have applications for doing route optimization, for being able to better navigate the sea. So having more efficient charts and maps in electronic format and better systems to do that, or reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. So all these things are happening with digital applications. Of course, you have the office automation. So
yes, right, yeah, and of course, COVID also accelerated some of these digital transformations.
Yes, it has,
well.
mainly in the office environment, because ships are operating 90% of their time are operating in a remote connection environment. But there is also the change of the connectivity, the increased connectivity that is happening. So you have higher bandwidths, so better coverage with satellites, so increased communication. So the vessel to shore, the ship to shore communication is not what it used to be like 10 years ago.
Oh, right, okay.
Now you even have things like several different technologies on satellites being used and tested. You have products like the Starlink that they're probably going to completely transform the maritime sector and the way the ships are communicate with the shore systems.
Yeah,
so it's not like the isolated entities that we used to think of.
It's kind of like a big IoT sort of network, isn't it?
Exactly, a big IoT, yeah.
So there's something that I would love to drill down into, but I think we have many topics to cover, so So I think for our audience, when we talk about cyber threat in the maritime sector, many of them will be familiar with NotPetya, right? That hit the Maersk shipping line. That was back in 2017 or 2018, I can't remember. Yes, that's right.
I think it was 17.
17,
if I remember correctly.
And then after that, there's
and it was actually not intended, so the initial entry point, it was not the maritime domain. The non-Petya was like a side effect.
Unfortunate sort of collateral damage.
Exactly, but it made a huge impact in the maritime domain as well.
Yeah, so what happened there was, if I understand right, it affected or disrupted a lot of the sort of enterprise network, and then that cascade down to the logistics and all the organization.
Well, it completely disrupted one of the major players out in the market. It completely halted their operations. So it was maybe for some of us who were not willing to believe that the damage that a cyber breach could do, that was
a big lesson, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then even I think even before that, there was a few cyber incidents that hit port operators,
in port authorities,
Right, and again that hit the sort of the enterprise network applications, doesn't it?
Exactly. I think we even had older ones like the Aramco case, which goes back even 15 years ago.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
Right,
and it was again a huge disruption for the organization, for the company.
So what do you think are some of the similarities and differences, when we look at some of these threats, right, compared to other sectors?
Well, obviously there are many similarities because we are still talking about applications, we are still talking about information technologies or IT systems. So obviously many things are still the same in the maritime sector, but there's also a huge difference.
Okay.
And the huge difference comes with the operational technology or with the IoT-like systems in the maritime domain. So on a vessel network, we have, let's say, the business part of the network where the typical applications, IT applications exist, and then we have all the so-called operational technology. So where the sensors and the PLCs and let's say systems for the bridge system, so the systems that exist on the bridge of a ship might include navigation, might include engine control, might include bilge and ballast systems, so systems that they are more specific to the maritime domain. And they are quite different technologies, different vendors are involved, so we do not have the typical IT players, and this is a big difference comparing to the office environment, because it's not possible to use, let's say, the same technical measures.
That's right.
So you cannot just take a firewall and use the same firewall or just install an antivirus on an operational technology piece of equipment. It's the equivalent in the land, like being in an industrial site and having industrial control systems, so systems that need to be always on, always available. You cannot simply go and do a port scanning or a patching simply like that, because that system those systems usually support critical vessel operations and need to be always on. So you cannot just simply switch off because you did a vulnerability assessment and you just managed to take down a system. So with those things we need to be very careful, and those are the things that make the cybersecurity in the maritime world a whole lot different than the typical office environment.
And of course, some of these are equipment manufacturers that
exactly
are also different from, say, industrial control system equipment manufacturers, isn't it? So there's no really what do you call it? One size fits all sort of method to mitigate this risk. Okay. So talking about this, then, what are the kind of typical cyber defenses that ships?
Well, we try to be, let's say, on the gateway level, so we try to have a typical firewall, usually an advanced firewall. So and then some let's say systems that you need to do the network segregation, so to make sure that you have on different parts of the network the operational technology segregated from the IT technology. And then there is also the need to have connectivity for the crew for recreational purposes. And then this is also a different story because different applications. So network segregation is important. And we are also looking at, let's say, technologies like security information and event management systems like CIEMs, that they do an aggregation of events, a correlation of the different logs from many different systems across the vessel network, and they can give you an indication of whether is happening a compromise on your network. So these are systems that we typically expect to see, and of course the typical antivirus or the anti-malware that exists, because you still have personal computers on board, so antivirus need to exist. But the difficulty is with let's say systems that they are not able to support or to have an antivirus installed. So what do you do when you have an automatic identification system, IACS, or an ECDIS system, electronic chart display and information system?
What do you do?
So a few vendors exist in the world, and a few major providers, and it's such a niche technology.
Oh, I see.
They obviously have proprietary software, and it's not very easy to just take any antivirus or any firewall and install it on their systems or just do a scan. So you have to be on a different level of the network and try to do the protection there.
Right, okay. So,
Yeah, please go ahead.
yeah, no, I was thinking when you talk about, AIS systems and electronic chart
Chart
display,
display, exactly.
ACDS systems, and I was thinking about, the crew members, right, on ships, right? What
Expertise do they need
what
to
kind
have?
of cyber defenses awareness do they have?
Well, ideally, shouldn't be put additional, let's say, burden in their mind, because the crew on board, they already have enough to do. So we should make sure that there is a policy that they follow. Obviously, they have to follow certain procedures. Some of them might be those that we should typically expect from the average user, being in an office environment, like checking your emails or browsing the internet in a, let's say, conscious way. So that's the typical stuff, but also making sure that other routines are being followed on board, like making sure that, for example, physical protection, like certain spaces within the ship environment are protected.
Right, physical
so
security, right.
Nobody can go in and just...
stick a USB, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I see, right.
USBs, it's another pain point for the vessels, because USBs freely, circulate around. So ideally, on a ship network, only authorized USBs should be, let's say, being able to work and be connected. So we need to be able to have some cyber hygiene, so making sure that the USBs are being scanned, because what is happening, there are certain routines on board that they more or less rely on USB sticks on a daily basis. So when you want to do a chart update, you download the charts usually on a PC on board, and then you take via USB and you insert on the ECDIS system.
Oh, right, okay,
so
okay.
For certain shipping companies, this is a reality, and they use USBs widely. So it's not very easy to control. It's not very easy to protect.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It seems like it's a whole new world of cyber threats and defenses on the seas, right?
Well, it isn't new, but it's also like the typical stuff, because even though a vessel, a ship, is a remote entity, it still has one or more IP addresses. So if a malevolent user, malevolent, let's say, actor is doing a scan and trying to find on a range of IP addresses where the vulnerabilities exist, if the malevolent actor is able to find the vulnerability, he or she will keep on going. So regardless of being an office environment or a ship environment. So with the increase of bandwidth, ships are becoming like IT environment, like the office environment.
I think it's really fascinating, but I'm afraid that we don't have much time to further talk about this today, but I want to get your last thoughts before we go. So talking about, not going from NotPetya, and also you mentioned, cyber incidents in the maritime sector that went back more than 10, 15 years ago, I believe you mentioned. What do you think will be the emerging cyber threats? A lot of people are talking about AI, right? Artificial intelligence, automation of, for example, threat intelligence will obviously help with cyber defenses, but it will also help the threat actors to do some of these, scanning for vulnerabilities.
You hit all the right points, or the right pain points, if I could say so. AI is going to make a huge impact. I'm not sure at the moment we're able to understand how much of a disruption, how much of an evolution is going to be, not only for the maritime sector, but for every market for every industry
For every sector, yeah.
We just started to see what AI can do for us, at least for the average user, you know, with ChatGPT
Yeah, that's
and
right.
everything.
Of course, yeah.
But AI has been working, you know, in the background for many years, and it's being developed and it's being used even for, let's say, typical cybersecurity systems like CMs, like XDRs, like EDRs. So they are using AI to being able to correlate the vast amount of data that they receive and make sure that they can, let's say, identify a possible breach happening. So AI is going to be a
Big help, yeah.
big help, and a major shift is going to bring about a major shift in the maritime domain, and of course connectivity, because bandwidth is increasing and is becoming cheaper. So ships at a certain point we expect to be almost like an office environment with, I wouldn't say the same connectivity, but with increased connectivity. And the typical tools that a malevolent actor, a hacker, could use to attack an office environment might be possible to be used against a vessel with the same ease.
Oh, wow, okay.
So if I could say one, let's say, last thing from our point of view, from the classification point of view, we should not, let's say, enjoy the benefits of digitalization without investing in cybersecurity. We should invest in cybersecurity as well. It goes hand in hand, you know, cybersecurity investment with technology advancement and digitalization.
I think that's also one of the principles that many best practices also try to push out, security by design, right? So put security into part of your design process up front.
Exactly.
So don't deal with it after the fact. Right. So thank you, Michael, for this fascinating glimpse into the cyber threat landscape in the maritime sector. I think there's many other questions I have, but I think we are running out of time. But thank you so much for your time today, Michael.
Thank you very much for inviting us and for having this discussion. Really a pleasure talking to you, Jane.